You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, nice to be back with you all again. You're listening to me, Mighty Blue, or Steve Adams, and the show is Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. This week, we're on episode number 368, and honestly, I originally wasn't going to have our main guest today. Boy, I'm glad I changed my mind. His name is Kenneth Pararo, and the two strikes against him were his trail name, which is Moron, and the way he introduced his own podcast, which you'll hear about in our interview. But as soon as we started talking, I immediately overcame the prejudices that I initially had. This guy is not a moron by any stretch, and he articulated so clearly several things I feel about the trail. I think you're really going to enjoy his story. Kenneth will be on in a moment. Then we're really into the Mighty Blue class of 23 with three of our members this week. First up, Bryan Robbins starts this very morning, April the 6th, from Springer, followed 2 days later when Steve Kortekamp and his daughter Brooke setting out from the same place. Then we catch up with Betty McInerney, who I spoke with the other day when she was at the top of Albert Mountain, a bit of an iconic spot as it's just about the 100-mile mark. Then we finish up with the end of chapter 15 of George Stefanos' Then the Hail Came, with George just about hanging on by a thread as he makes his way home for a much-needed bit of R&R. As you're going to hear, he wonders if he'll ever make it back out on the trail. Of course, as this is the end of the book, spoiler alert, he went back. So let's get going and meet a guy who is definitely not a moron. This is Kenneth Pararo. Today's guest is Kenneth Pararo. Kenneth wrote to me about a pretty long hike that he did last year, and he'd podcasted the whole thing. Naturally, I was interested. Hey, Kenneth, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for coming on the show. And somebody who's podcasted a lot, as somebody else who's podcasted a long hike, I appreciate the amount of work one puts into that. So we're going to talk about it in a minute. But I think the most important thing is to clear up what I believe is one of the worst trail names, especially as you are totally within your rights to refuse it. Why on earth was you called, and why on earth did you accept the name of Moron?
Yeah, good question. Natural place to start. Well, one of the things that was an unintended consequence is that people always do laugh and smile when I tell them my trail name. So that was like an added bonus to that I didn't really realize at the time. But yeah, Moron, I went on trail and I really didn't want to have a trail name that was like self-congratulatory or sounded cool. I felt like a lot of people, like getting your trail name is like an important part of the whole experience. And being on trail was like one of the most humbling like experiences of my life, and so I really wanted to kind of put myself in a position of lower stature just in general. I was looking for some sort of trail name that would do that for me.
The only way is up from there, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, exactly. If you set the bar that low, everything else can only be an improvement. But yeah, so I got the trail name at top of Georgia Hostel within the first 70 miles on trail. There was a guy there named Atlas, who I will forever be grateful to for bestowing me with this wonderful name. And he gave me a pretty big dressing down. I never saw him again after that time period, and apparently other people knew of him, and he was a little, I don't know if I would say rough around the edges, but he definitely put his opinions out there. And he was telling me about all these thru-hikers that he had been helping.
Pompous ass is what you're actually saying. Pompous ass is what you're actually saying, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm trying not to mince words too much, but yeah, you could definitely say that. Yeah. So yeah, he was telling me about everyone who he had been helping and watching on YouTube and following on Instagram and stuff, and that there was one person particularly who had touched him, who was like a pretty overweight person who was struggling a lot on the physical side of things. And Atlas told me that you have to unite the physical, the spiritual, and the mental in order to make it to Katahdin. And so when he saw me and he offered me a ride back to the trailhead and I declined, he said, it's morons like you who come out here and they flaunt their physicality and they think that they're just going to be able to get to Katahdin in a week's time. And they're not really taking into account all of the difficulties that this endeavor really presents to most people. And I don't know, there's something about the presentation. Moron is kind of a weird insult. I don't really hear that word a lot. So there was like some unique quality there. And I was just like, wow, this is like checking all the boxes that I wanted. I wanted something that would degrade me. And this is perfect because it's someone who's yelling at me too at the time. So it was a unique like transfer. And he didn't say that should be my trail name. But as soon as I was walking back to the trail, making my own podcast clip about the experience, I was like, Moron, that's it. That's perfect. I love that.
You should have said thank you to him.
I should have. Yeah. And if I ever see him again, I will.
Oh, that is fantastic. It's funny, actually. I think it's a worse name in England than it is over here. I can see that. I remember calling somebody a moron when I was a kid, and my mum went mad at me. She said, "You never call someone that." So maybe it's a bit easier over here. I don't know. Yeah. And you're fairly new to backpacking. I know you're still quite a young man. How old actually are you again?
I'm 33.
Oh, right. Okay. You're not fresh out of college, and you're a little bit older, and you're that growing demographic in the 30s and 40s who are hiking. But you're fairly new to backpacking itself. Tell us how you got into it in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Another guy who I have a lot of thanks to give to. My friend, like an elementary school friend, this guy named Ben, he put out this general message on Facebook back in 2018. Just asking if anyone who was reading his status updates would want to go and do a week on the Appalachian Trail. And I was really, really into cycling at the time. And I was actually just obsessed with literally trying to bike every single road in Atlanta. And this is like a project. Yeah, there is a subset of weirdos out there, and there's a great service called wanderer.earth, and it will integrate with your cycling, and it will overlay all of the roads that you've been on with all the roads you haven't been on, and you can like make a game plan to actually literally like travel on every single road in any part of Earth.
Hang on, before you tell us how you got to backpacking, then you got to tell me how many roads have you done so far in Atlanta?
I got up to 66.9%, and then that drove me crazy. There's about 4,000 miles of unique roads in Atlanta. And so I guess I did somewhere in the vicinity, 2,500 miles or something like that, which was like a concerted effort on top of having a full-time job, girlfriend, dogs, and a house. And so it drove me mad, for sure. Can
you map it out? Can you map it out though? Can you sort of work out almost the optimal route? Or do you keep, in America, I noticed the cities in America tend to be up and down, don't they? They're straight lines. They're not in the UK at all. So can you literally go up one across, then down, then up, then down, and so on?
Yeah, so there is this thing, I think it's called like the mailman's paradox or something like that actually examines that exact question to figure out the most efficient way to not be backtracking.
Wow.
The service Wanderer, if you pay for a subscription, I believe that they will allow you to tap into their AI and actually create such a route so that, you wouldn't want to do it all at once, of course, but you could definitely specify like where you want to go and how in a certain period of time. But that is a good question. And the answer is yes.
That is so damn cool. Anyway, we digress there. So your buddy from school, tell us about the Facebook post.
Yeah, so he was just asking if anyone wanted to go and join him, and I'd gotten so comfortable with cycling that it had been a long time since like anything had really intimidated me, any kind of challenge, like going for 100-mile rides, going for multiple day rides. It was like kind of just very comfortable, and the idea of going on the Appalachian Trail in the winter, possibly wet, just the discomfort, I was like drawn and repulsed to it at the same time. Because I was like, wow, that would be really cool. Because athletically, going back to Atlas and me being a moron, I was like, well, the physical part's not going to be the hard part here. Because like I've got the athletic endurance. I'm sure my feet are going to get messed up, and they did. But I was just like, I was so intrigued by the challenge because it's just like on the same level as cycling in a certain respect of like exploration. And I just hadn't really spent much time in the woods. So I don't know. I've always heard that the things that you are most scared of are the things you should run the quickest toward. And I was just like, I should do this. So reached out.
That's good. That's complete nonsense, by the way. You should not ride quickness towards them.
Yeah. It's funny.
You might want to slowly step towards them from time to time, but not rush.
You're not wrong. Them. Yeah. It's funny. All those little cliche phrases, if you really look at them, there's usually another cliche that says the exact opposite, but they just are seldomly said in a pair. But yeah, you're definitely right.
So, hang on. So as a cyclist then, were you at the time, were you a bike packer as well? Had you done you said you did over longer trips. Had you done overnight camping trips as a cyclist?
Not in the woods. Like I had biked from Atlanta to New York City in 2017.
Oh, wow.
But that was Airbnb. That kind of was like, that was the limit of my comfort, and like the idea of not having a shower every night was like terrifying. It was like part of my nightly hygiene routine, and I just wouldn't even be able to sleep because I would just feel so gross. And so that's another unique opportunity that the Appalachian Trail opened up, because it was like, well, okay, where are my actual limits? And man, that week in 2018 in March, my friend Ben had set everything up so that we'd be kind of in the bubble of thru-hikers that were going through. And
interesting.
It was great. Yeah, I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing. He had hiked back when he was in college and gotten as far as Damascus and had a very transformative experience. And I remember I actually was studying abroad in Japan in, I think, 2012. And I'd seen pictures of him that he was posting on Facebook. And I was like, there was something markedly different about the way he looks. Like, he looks really content. He looks more mature than I have ever seen him before. Like, he had found himself, basically. Like, that was my read of the images that he was posting. Like, something transformative had happened for him.
Isn't it interesting? I did ask somebody I've asked people in the past about how they see changes in their friends, and you were watching your friend on Facebook transforming, and I suspect a lot of people, when they go away for 6 months from home and they see their partner 6 months later, they can see that instant transformation, can't they?
Yeah.
But you're actually seeing transformations in your body through pictures on Facebook. That's quite something, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was sort of part of just the fact that the longevity of the friendship from, again, elementary school, middle school, high school. Like, I had seen all of the formative years of his life, but we'd kind of fallen out of touch in college. But then I was like, like, there is something behind those eyes that I never had seen before. And I definitely attributed that to the Appalachian Trail because, I mean, it's such an undertaking, you know, I mean, and it is transformative in one way or another, positive or negative, you know, all the above.
So he took you out onto the AT. It was in Georgia. Was it? Did you start from Springer in this little trip?
Yeah, we did Amicalola, in fact. So did the stairs, did the approach trail, and he wanted to do the Georgia section and basically end at Winding Stair Gap. And yeah, it was great. I really, really hated it for the first 3 days. Like, I was cold, I was wet. I didn't understand how to properly layer my clothing to keep certain things dry, and then have those things for night. So I got my fleece soaked the first day, and I'd never really slept. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the learning curve was certainly steep, and I'm a moron, so you know, double steep for me.
You've got to stop hiding behind that, because you're clearly not a moron, by the way. You've got to stop hiding behind that.
Yeah, that might be the final wink of the trail name itself. Is just that it's a humbling exercise for someone who doesn't often think I'm wrong. But I have certainly learned that I am more wrong more often than I thought. So, but yeah, in any case, I mean, we were out for, I think it was 10 days, and a pretty aggressive schedule, like nothing crazy, but 15 to 20 miles a day, which for me coming from, and the conditions were just tough, like really, really cold, really, really wet. I don't think it was warm at all the whole time in my memory anyway, even with the type 2 fun kind of kicking in. But I mean, getting to Blood Mountain Cabins, and I just remember him looking at me and he's like, we could stay here tonight and get pizza and beer and recover. And I was like, oh my God. I don't like to say in my life that there are things that I need, because I think need is has connotations that I think are very seldomly satisfied when people say that they need something. But that was one of the first times in my life I was like, I need to get off trail and warm up, have a cup of coffee, just kind of reassess my life decisions, But
so you're in Georgia, you're doing this hike with him, and you didn't enjoy the first 3 days, but you obviously got into it suddenly. What was it about that journey that made you think, and it was 10 days, what was it about that trip that suddenly switched and you thought, this is not too bad?
Well, I guess the thing, it's the oscillation of the highs and the lows. Like, I think the first 3 days, it was just like going farther and farther down into the trough of the experience, where it's just like, it really is difficult. And like, I'd never used the bathroom outside. So that whole process and something that was very dependable in my life was gone in the way that I knew it. Just again, bitter cold. And then also I started to meet some of the other thru hikers, the people who were actually planning on going the full distance. And I was like, and we're all going through the same thing, the same condition. And I just loved the community that was surrounding it, and that the misery loves company. We'd all kvetch and bellyache at the end of the day about how hard things were. And I was like, oh, this does lighten the burden. And that was where I think the trough kind of subsided. And then it started to go to that, just the highs that you get on the Appalachian Trail are just so high. And I'd never experienced them anywhere in my life until that point.
Yeah. I actually wrote down two things that you said, both of which I'm going to talk about now. First was, you said the highs and lows of hiking were intoxicating, that really meant a lot to me straight away. I could say, yeah, of course they are. I mean, and I thought, yes, I'd not really thought about it that way, but they absolutely are. But the other thing you said, which I loved also, you said that you told me that you've got a capacity to suffer. What do you actually mean by that, having a capacity to suffer? Is it that you want to drive yourself harder, or you could just put up with bad shit?
I think it's that I want to I want to drive myself harder. Like, when I ultimately left my career to do my own thru hike in 2019, I remember one of my coworkers very kind of taking me aside and saying like, aren't you kind of scared that you'll get to some point and you'll be asking yourself like why you're doing this? And I was like, I never heard it put quite like that. But as I thought about the question, I was just like, that's kind of like what I've always been looking for. Like, I never really got to the point where I was just like, I've always loved suffering and struggling. Like, and I think that's probably part of what makes me a decent cyclist. And I don't know, I just kind of view it, it's sort of a meditation, I think. Like, again, I don't know, there is such a thing as walking meditation, but I don't know, my own capacity for suffering, I always kind of felt like, I don't know if it's arrogant to say, but I felt like it was beyond average, maybe, at least compared to the people who were in my trail family and people who I went on bike rides with. I would see them kind of crack at the seams before I felt like I was getting to that point.
Is there something within you that has a need to suffer? And using that word "need" again, by the way, sorry about that. But is there something within you that makes you need to have that suffering to almost enjoy it enough?
I think for me, personally, I think I've always had an emphasis for myself to be strong. And I think that desire to be strong makes me endure more. Yeah, so I think it is definitely something specific to me. I think that I want to know what my limits are, and I will push myself until I find them, I guess. And I guess this year I did.
Well, that's it. We're going to come to that one, and that is interesting. Yeah. And listening, especially talking to you now, because I've always thought that the cyclists are the fittest sportsmen in the world, especially the Tour de France guys. I mean, they're crazy. I mean, the way their heart must pound, and I know several people have had heart attacks while they're cycling. Mm-hmm. So you decided to get onto the AT in the same year as my second thru hike, actually 2019. Mm-hmm. How did you square doing this, especially at the age of early 30s? How did you square doing that with your career, whatever it was at the time?
Yeah, I really wanted to get a sabbatical. I had been at my company for 5 years, and prior to getting on the Appalachian Trail, my original idea was to actually bike cross country, which would be a lot shorter of a duration. And I was trying to figure out a way to kind of advertise or make it worth them letting me go off and do that somehow. But they wouldn't grant that. And so ultimately, when I decided to do the thru hike, I knew that wasn't going to be something that was on the table, because that was going to be twice or 2.5 times as long. And so I just kind of, I don't know. Another amazing thing about thru hiking is just like, if you just show up, it happens. Like, if you show up to the terminus at the beginning and you show up every single day and some tragedy doesn't befall you, like, it's amazing how that little incremental process just kind of stacks up and ultimately takes you to your destination. So I guess I just kind of said that I was going to do it, and that required me leaving my job. And thankfully, I had enough time to prepare and train and save. And I just thought that I would just kind of figure things out when I got back.
I've heard it said that showing up is half the battle, and and it's very true. I think I've often said to people who've gone on the trail before, if they finish at 1,000 miles or 1,500 miles or whatever, they turned up. You go underneath that arch, you're ahead of 99.5% of the people in the country just don't even get to the arch. So it's worthwhile. And I noticed from your dates, I'm just looking at them now, you started over a month after me. And you finished nearly a month before me. So you probably passed me at some stage, but you probably
may have
went so fast past, so we wouldn't have noticed each other. What was it like to move at you did it in about 4 months you did it in?
Yeah, I think it was 4 months and 4 days. I mean, we kind of front loaded it, honestly. I think we were really, really excited at the beginning, and maybe all the way up through Pennsylvania into New Jersey, I guess. There was definitely a period of time where we kind of realized that this awesome thing that we were doing was kind of elapsing right in front of us. And that old adage about last one to Katahdin wins, like, comes to mind for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I don't know. Everyone was pretty tired towards the end for sure. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think the worst day on trail was probably getting to Katahdin. That I think we did go regrettably fast because there's just so much to experience, and you do get sort of into that. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I know we'll get to it, but even the second time I did it, I went too fast.
I that's what I was thinking about, because this is an experience to be savoured, and harking back to what you said earlier on about how you saw somebody transform. Did your family or your partner or anybody, your friends, did they notice a transformation in you at all, or was this just another part of what Kenneth does? You do long distance cycling and so on. Is this what you're like?
I think this is what I'm like. Yeah. I don't think that they witnessed as much of a transformation. I think this time, and this could be just a product of age as well, but I did feel like I came off trail with a greater capacity for empathy and understanding others. But I'm not sure if that's a common experience or something that can be directly attributed to the trail itself. But I did feel a widening and opening of my heart a bit more than usual, which some of my family...
exactly the same. I felt exactly the same as that. Funnily enough, I'm glad you said that, and it is something. It is you are suffering along with others, and even though you're having a great time, but there is a certain amount of suffering. But anyway, you finished the trail, and you didn't stop hiking, did you? You've done the Florida Trail. I think you've done is it the long trail you've done, and one or two others as well. But in 2022. Last year, you decided to really go for it again. You went back to the 18. Before we talk about that and how you actually did it, I was asked when I went again, is why on earth I would want to go on the same trail again within 5 years. For me, it was. And for me, it was because I thought, I knew, and I think I was right, that it was a different experience. So I always said, why wouldn't you want to go again if it was so great? What was your thought process on basically doing another AT hike?
Yeah, well, I mean, I had the same questions asked of me. And for me, the answer came bubbling to the surface very quickly. And I really liked the way that my mind kind of framed it. It was just like, it's the same reason you go to your favorite restaurant, like more than once. Like it is a different experience every time, like you're saying. Yeah, but there's something about that restaurant. It's a long bloody
meal.
No doubt. You're right about that.
Damn long meal.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, the AT, I mean, I know that trail magic and the trail culture and community, they exist everywhere else on the CDT, the PCT, but I don't know. I think I'm a thoroughly East Coast kind of person. The time that I have spent out West has felt very foreign to me. Like it's still America, of course, but the cultural difference between East Coast and, middle of the United States and then West Coast, I think that it is palpable. And it goes back to the restaurant thing. It's just like, I know where I want to eat.
And this time, of course, you decided to mix it up a little bit. You didn't want to go from Springer. Well, you did go through Springer.
I did.
But you'd already done 400 odd miles. So tell us where you actually started and what was the reason behind that, why you did it?
Absolutely. So I had the honor of meeting Nimble Nomad following.
Marvelous.
Yeah, he's great. Just a treasure of a human being, and accessible too. That's the thing. Like anyone who wants to drive to, I like to say Weyagufka, but I think it might be Sylacauga, Alabama, where he lives in the Ranger cabin. I mean, you can you can go there, and if you're hiking the Pinhoti Trail, he'll let you stay in the cabin. You can share a meal, coffee, a fire, a chat. And he told me about the Baxter to Bama thing that he's trying to kind of, really build a bigger following for, to start the Appalachian Trail where the Appalachian Mountains really start at Flag Mountain. And I was pretty touched by his story, and he was showing me excerpts from his book and everything. I was thinking about doing an Appalachian Trail yo-yo at that point anyway, and I was like, well, why not just add 400 extra miles at the beginning? Like that's not a bad idea. And if it makes Nimblewell have a smile on his face, that's like double the joy. So I was like, okay, well, I'll start on the Pinhoti, and I'll see what that's all about. It had a lot of road walking, which I love road walking, so that excited me. And it is a nice gradual like approach to the Appalachian Trail.
Really? Is it? So, I mean, I've not been on the Pinhoti, or is it Bent Mackay as well? I've not been on those. So are they good shakedown? But is that a good shakedown for the AT then, which is quite a long old shakedown? Or did you feel it really helped you with the AT?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, by the time, it was certainly more gentle than the Appalachian Trail. By the time I'd gotten to the end of the Pinhoti Trail, the Bent Mackay Trail was very similar to what I was expecting on the AT. So that wasn't particularly easy. Like, I think that might have been the first time I went back up to like 4,000 feet. And I just remember some climb like almost immediately once I got off the Pinhoti that was just a real kick in the teeth. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, I think it would be a great place to do a shakedown hike and or just approach the AT, because by the time you get there, your feet are probably going to be in better shape than if you just jumped straight on at Springer, and your legs might be closer to hiker level. But yeah, it was also very desolate, which I thought was kind of cool. Like, it was definitely, I really, really enjoyed being out there because there was like no competition for any of the resources that you would expect to need on trail, which was a unique thing because of the AT.
Yeah, but funny enough, you then turn up after 420 miles at Springer. What was it like arriving there with all these people doing 7 or 8 miles a day? Well, you must have been cranky at 20s at the time, weren't you? 25.
I was. Yeah. In fact, the day I got to Springer, it was either a 28 or 33 mile day. It was a long day because I was like, oh, I could actually just do that. And the thing that always kind of spurs me to do these big days are those little rewards, like the thing that makes the trail so intoxicating, because I know if I can get to Springer, then I can go to that buffet that they have at the lodge, or I can get like a beer in town if I do like 35 or 45 miles. So that's always a pretty big inspiration for me to get me up and going. But yeah, I mean, for sure, there were a few people, because I actually, this is kind of funny, but I had the pleasure to do the approach trail north and southbound and the stairs up and down that same day when I finally got to Amicalola to register my thru hike. Because I stayed at Springer Mountain. Yeah, right, exactly. And I didn't want to take any kind of shortcuts, So.
Oh my gosh, you must be crazy, man! But it was a fun day. As hell, so it didn't really matter. And you chose to podcast. By the way, you didn't podcast in 2019, did you, or did you just do it in 2022?
I did podcast in 2019. I was also a Trek correspondent so I had my own personal podcast, and then through the Trek, I was a trail correspondent. So I had two different outlets for all of that kind of stuff, but that's on YouTube, all of those things. I don't really know how fit for consumption they are, but I did have a little personal diary journal thing that I did that was kind of inconsistent, and certainly was a benchmark that kind of let me know what I wanted to do for this most recent hike in order to document it properly.
So what did you do? What did you use? You use your phone? I presume you use your phone. And what did you use? What sort of microphone did you use?
Yeah, everything was on the phone, just a MP3 recorder. I have an Android, so nothing fancy, nothing special. Oftentimes it was actually pretty frustrating because the clips that I would make would kind of clip out, and I would I don't know exactly what happens, but it just like skips like sections of words, and it just sounds like jangled garbage kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I just every single day, the end of my day, and actually the Pinhoti really tuned me into this kind of, I guess, habit and routine, which was to basically try to somehow get a beer or a hiker wine, which hiker wine, is that a concept you're familiar with specifically?
No, not at all. No.
All right. Well, we don't have to go too much into my own personal debauchery.
Well,
but
no, I love hearing about hiker wine. You carry on.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. So, I mean, in most, well, not most. If you're lucky, you can go to a grocery store or a gas station, and they'll sell those small 500 milliliter plasticized containers of wine. Okay. And there's a great guy, masochist. Matt Hinkst.
You won't believe this. I'm speaking to him in less than 30 minutes.
Oh, you really?
Isn't that amazing?
Isn't
that amazing? You carry on. Sorry.
Yeah.
I will,
so
the
moniker hiker wine, that was something that I heard him say on his videos. I watched every single video that he made when he did the ECT and many of his videos that have come out after that. And I love that term because I'd never heard it before, but I mean, it is the perfect container for a hiker. Like, it's not too much. You're not going to get like sick or anything like that. But at the end of the long day, knowing that you packed out a half liter of wine is like, I mean, the day is fine after that.
Nice.
If you got the wine, the day is fine. Yeah.
That's right. And were you committed to posting regularly? Because having done it myself, you get into camp, especially if you're exhausted late at night, and you've kind of had enough, haven't you? So actually doing a podcast, did you actually do a recording every day, or did you store sort of 3 days at a time worth of information and then do it in one go?
I did it religiously every single night, just like saying prayers or anything, like because I wanted to get the freshness of my daily chronology that I knew was going to just evaporate the longer I waited to capture it. And so I would have a 2-part like style and format for my episodes. One which was just purely going over chronology, where I started, how far I went, anything that was interesting that happened. And then the second part would be like list items that I had, like thoughts that I had thought about that I wanted to expound on, but didn't really want to do it until I was like seated and could reflect on them to see if they were actually worth talking about with myself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. That's really. You did have the most irritating introduction, though, didn't you? What did you used to say to people?
Hello. Yeah. That actually is a little. That's homage to my previous hiking partner, Allie. She lives, her family is from like northeastern Pennsylvania, very close to the Delaware Water Gap area. And, she's got like a little bit of New York influence in their vernacular and vocabulary and speech patterns. So I always kind of, I'm a bit of a shit stirrer and kind of, I like to poke people, and so I just have this exaggerated way of my perception of how she talks, which she actually does not talk like that at all, but she brought something out of me. And so, yeah. Hello is, that's certainly not everyone's cup of tea.
As I said to you at the time, it made me laugh. But then you did something amazing. Well, for me, it was amazing because you're doing this hike. You must have by then been something like 2,400 miles into it by Rangeley, because Range is about 150, 200 to go, something like that. I'm not terribly sure. Yep. But you'd had enough, hadn't you?
I had.
So what happened?
Yeah, I finally found those limits. I heard a voice in my head saying that I'd never heard before. I hate this. Why am I doing this? After the whites in southern Maine, I was just like, God, this is just so hard and so much harder the second time. And thankfully, another compelling and compassionate voice kind of emerged. And, I was just like, I don't have to keep walking on the trail. Like I mentioned before, I love road walking. And I was like, road walking would be such a pleasure and such a joy now to not have to worry about going up all these mountains, to be able to go through towns every single day, carry less food, have better access to everything that I'm going to need. Just briefly, like my hiking partner, Allie, we biked cross country during COVID era in summer of 2020. And so during that, we actually learned how to, and learned is definitely, I use that term loosely, but we learned how to camp in towns without getting caught. And so I knew that even if I left the trail, I would be able to navigate my way through continuing to walk, which I still wanted to walk. I still wanted the adventure. But I was just like, the trail is just like, I can't keep going.
Isn't that strange? So your thing wasn't to complete the Appalachian Trail as such. Your thing was really to have an adventure and test your limits. Is that a fair assumption? Because if it is, why didn't you then simply go home? Because not only did you carry on walking, you walked apparently from Rangeley to the Canadian border then back to bloody Pennsylvania on the road.
Yeah.
How far is that then in terms of walking?
I think it was 1,100 miles, and 500 of that 1,100 was me going to Canada and then retracing my steps, like you're saying. So, like, because the northern Maine, there are so few roads. Like, I think it was called Maine Route 11, which took me to Fort Kent, which is the city on the border with Canada, and also the beginning of US Highway 1, which then runs all the way back down to Key West. But yeah, so those were kind of superfluous miles, really, because I just tagged it and then turned around. But I think, it was like I switched gear. I didn't care about summiting Katahdin. I still wanted to exercise every day and have fun in the way that I like to have fun, moronically. So it was really just like shifting gears. Like it was easier. Like I could put in the same amount of effort, the same amount of time every day, but I wasn't having to be so taxed by that same amount of time. Like I immediately started doing 35, and the longest day I did on the road was 49 and a half miles. And it was relatively, not considering the actual environmental circumstances, because it was raining, it was windy, and it was very cold, but it was so easy. Like after doing everything on trail, the whites, I mean, it was a joy. Like it was just so refreshing.
So you got home. So where was your Katahdin of that trip? Back in Pennsylvania, I suppose.
I kind of shifted gears again in Pennsylvania, because then I had my bike shipped out to me.
Of course you did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right.
It's a 3-gear box here, so that we're getting into the final gear. But yeah, my final destination was Northeast Georgia, where I actually am now. My parents' house here. But yeah, so I did bike from Pennsylvania to Georgia, and that was my last ace in the hole, I guess, for me being able to continue this adventure until I just had enough.
Are you done with the AT now, or do you think you'll ever go back?
Oh, I'd love to go back. Yeah. Yeah. Especially any time in life, since I got off trail. I mean, it took a couple months for this really start to kick back in, but anytime I'm kind of dissatisfied, I'm like, I could definitely go like through hike again. But I would love to do it in the future. I think that it'll be a little while, but I plan to find myself on there again in the hopefully not too far off future.
And one final question, really. How do you, and I'm not asking you to give me any details particularly, how do you fund this? Because this is not, you're not working as such, are you?
Yeah.
You're doing lots of different ventures. How do you fund this? Well, hang on, you've just answered me. You live with your parents.
Well, I did when I first got back. Now I guess after getting off the Appalachian Trail in 2019, the first time, maybe this was one of the evidences of my transformation, because it was a very typical story where I didn't want any of the things that I had previously. I didn't want a career. I didn't want a house. My girlfriend and I of 5 years broke up. I started to really pare down. I was already a huge minimalist, but I was like committed to this lifestyle. I was like, man, this is like everyone. I can't even tell you how many times in my life, biking cross country, people that I've met on the Appalachian Trail, usually older people, they would just be like, I wish I had done something like this when I was your age. And I was just like, well, I should just heed that advice and follow my intuition. And my intuition and my bliss were saying, like, get rid of all this stuff, like, and keep pursuing this until you can't or don't want to, which is, I guess, the same difference. But yeah, so I sold my house, and then I have been coasting on house money for that duration of time that I've been out exploring and, I guess, adventuring.
Wow. Good for you, man. I don't wish I'd done it when I was younger at all. I'm glad I did it in my 60s. I couldn't have coped with it at your age. I just couldn't have done. And because I know what I was like. I know what I was like. So I'm glad I did it in my 60s. And I'm much fitter now in my 60s than I've been in any other decade in my life because I hiked.
That's
so
awesome.
I'm glad I did it then, to be honest with you. But look, if you do future adventures, and yours are great adventures, the way you do different things, stay in touch. Let me know what happens. And if you've got another interest in it, just come back on the show and tell us about it. But I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about it.
Yeah, well, thank you for your time and everything else. It's been fun. Yeah, I was a little nervous about this, but I think I got into a little bit more of a flow. You're a great conversationalist.
Appreciate it. And you. All right, you take it easy, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Cheers then. Bye.
Happy trails.
Wasn't he a smart guy? I love what he said about it being all about just showing up, and your hike kind of happens. And I did notice in the editing that he kept tapping his desk. I was able to cut out most of them when he wasn't speaking, so I hope that it didn't put any of you off. I've got a link to his podcast in the show notes, so try not to be as instantly judgmental as I was and give it a listen. Once you get into it, it's good stuff. I wasn't kidding about Matt Hengst, our guest from a couple of weeks ago. Kenneth mentioned him, and I truly was recording Matt just 30 minutes later. Now that is the serendipity of the trail. Now, our first member of the class of 23 this week, Bryan Robbins, who sets out from Amicalola State Park this very morning, April the 6th. Here's Bryan.
Hello.
Hey, Bryan, how are you?
I'm good, Steve. Mighty Blue. How are you?
I'm not too bad. We're recording at 7:30 in the morning on March the 28th, and you're heading out there soon, aren't you? So tell us when you're starting.
Okay, so I'm going to start the approach trail next Thursday, so a week from, I don't know, what is that, 8 days?
April the 6th. Yeah, I'm actually going to put this out on that day. So the day you start is the day people are going to hear you're out there as well. And you're still actually working, aren't you? So
right. I actually retire April 11th. So
oh, crikey.
I'm going out. My wife's driving me out on the 6th, staying in the lodge in Amicalola.
Right.
And I'll probably slack pack one or two of those days, but I want to feel my full pack and drive back after hiking 3 days.
Right.
Work a couple of days.
Oh,
and
dear
drive
me.
right back.
Oh my!
Drive
gosh.
a couple of days. Drive right back out there.
That is it's funny actually. I wonder how you're going to feel to do that. Everything would just feel so totally different, and it's almost like you're putting your life on hold for a couple of days. And you actually in the message you sent me when we arranged to talk today, do you have a leaving party last night?
Yesterday at work, they had a retirement party for me. It just worked out for them to do that a little bit week and a half ahead of time.
Right.
And last week down on the coast, my friends and my wife threw me a surprise send off retirement party. They had told me it was her birthday around that time, and they told it was a surprise birthday for her. And I get up there and all the friends are up there and it was for me.
Oh, that is so cool. So what do your friends think about you doing this then?
Oh, most of them think I'm nuts, but they can't really conceive whenever we start talking about it a little bit, and then it turns out to be 6 months.
Yeah.
I was thinking a few weeks. This isn't just a few weeks things. This is 6 months. So it's a shocker to a lot of them.
Have you second guessed yourself at all since you've started the preparations for this? I mean, you're obviously looking forward to it. You're obviously ready to go, or you feel like you're ready to go. Are there any sort of thoughts of, last minute, not nerves necessarily, but more second thoughts?
Being that I've rushed myself because of work, of how I had to finish out work.
Sure.
And then cramming how I need to get out there and get on the trail because, I'm starting so late. That I've had two dreams of I'm working on a railroad track and the train's coming.
Oh, right. Oh, dear me. Yeah. Just here, that train is going to hit you really hard when it comes as well.
But no, I'm confident what I'm doing is what I really want to do. Then, like you have said before, it's got to be the number one thing you want to do at the time.
Yes.
And now there's been a couple of, pre-hikes that I've done that I'm like laying there in the tent in the middle of nowhere. Why am I sleeping? That's going to take some adjustment to get some good night's sleep while you're in the tent. And
you found that quite tricky so far, have you, to get to sleep?
I haven't been out on the trail, the Appalachian Trail. I've been going some places here in Mississippi or Alabama that there is no one else around.
Right.
I've been dealing with which pillow issue. The biggest thing to me is pillow and keeping my sleeping bag on my mat.
All right.
I've got that pretty zeroed down. I got a Z-Pax pillow that you stuff. It's real surprising how much that little bag that you stuff your puffy coat in costs. But
Well, I had a dedicated pillow, a Cedar Summit pillow, and I got to tell you, I swear by that. And you just inflate. It's easy to inflate very quickly, and that really worked well for me. But to be honest with you, the whole thing of sleeping in your tent is alien to all of us, really. It's something you just have to get used to. You will get used to, because eventually you'll be bloody exhausted. You'll have to fall asleep. So, I wouldn't worry too much about that, because it's one of those things. How have your shakedowns gone in terms of the physicality? Because if you've been hiking on trails nearby, or have you?
Yeah, most of my hiking has been around here, more like mountain bike trails.
Right. Okay.
And my distance on that's pretty good. I'm getting 8-10 miles in, and doing that in 2.5, 3 hours. But this last weekend, or a couple of times, I've went out to Alabama, and they have a state park out there with a pretty good sized mountain. Like last week, my hike had 1,100 feet ascent, and that was like the ascent part was in like 2 hours. So.
Right. I think when you hit the trail, though, you will find your own pace. But remember, however well you think you're doing on that first day, just get used to it. Don't rush into it, because this is, you say you're starting late. This is the traditional time for people to start the AT, which was early April. So you're not in any way behind time at all. You should get there fine. I mean, I did it in the second time in under 6 months. So you can do it in under 6 months. That will only take you through to October. So you're absolutely fine with it. What about your base weight? How are you getting on with your base weight?
My base weight is right about 18 and a half pounds.
Okay.
My pack with food and water this last weekend was right about 24, 25 pounds.
That's very cool. And, that's very cool.
Of course, I didn't have that many days. I'm zeroing in on first aid kit.
Right.
What exactly food and how much food I'm taking. That's still what I have left to get taken care of this weekend.
Yeah. So what about the family? Are they getting nervous for you?
My wife is very supportive. They've been what she's been working on is the places and the trips that she's going to make to meet me places.
Nice.
And my son lives in Pennsylvania, and somewhere around July 4th, I should be up around where he is.
Right.
And my daughter from Texas is going to plan on going out there. My wife's planning on going out there in July. My wife's going to meet me 3 weeks into the hike, or shy of 3 weeks in the Smokies, pick me up there up at Newfound Gap, and then we're going to go over to a town and Bryson City and stay a night.
Yeah.
So
it's funny actually. By then you will have been acclimatized, as it were, and it's such an interesting thing. I met my ex-wife now, but my wife in 2014, and you're thrown out really, because you're with somebody, obviously somebody you love, but you're with somebody. And you kind of can't wait to get back to the trail. It's great to see them, but you get into this existence on the trail where you want to be on the trail. And I'm going to ask you about that when you actually do meet up once she goes back. Obviously, won't say anything bad, but you'll have an interesting perspective, because it is very different. Life becomes very different. So
that's interesting.
I just hope you enjoy it. As I say, this is going to go out in the morning you actually leave. So all I can say is best of luck. Let me know what happens in the first couple of week or so, and perhaps we'll talk again in another couple of weeks and get your first thoughts on the show then. All right?
All right. Thank you very much, Mighty Blue.
Okay, buddy. You take it easy, okay? And have a great time. Enjoy it.
All right. Take care.
Cheers then. Bye. That's unusual. He's going to slap back for a couple of days, head back home, retire, and then hit the trail again. I guess those few days will give him a taste of what it's to come, but he really won't get into it until he's out there full time. We'll catch his early impressions soon. Then, this coming Saturday the 8th, Steve Kortekamp and his daughter Brooke are going to be following Bryan. Let's hear from Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Steve. How are you?
Good.
So, we'll get straight on with it, actually. So I'm looking at my notes and so on. We've actually corresponded about 21 times so far, and it was only recently you were so excited about going, and you were meant to be going in February. So, and I know you went to see a doctor. So tell us what happened.
I was having some PVCs, and
What's that?
heart was beating like it's a preventricular contraction or complex,
right?
And it's like an extra beat your heart did. But I was having them like every 10 seconds.
Oh wow!
So that was a week before we were going to go on the trip. So I postponed it and got to see my cardiologist finally after about a month. We did a stress test and passed with flying colors. And he said it's probably just anxiety and
yeah,
go hit the trail.
Wow, that's interesting. So have you had issues? Yeah. Have you had issues in the past, or was this a bit of a surprise to you?
No, it was a surprise. No, I'd never had that before. I mean, I felt PVCs. So I was a paramedic, so I knew what they were, but
right.
I felt them before, but nothing like this. It was like they were bounding out of my chest.
Oh my gosh!
So,
have they subsided now?
Yes. Oh yeah, they're gone. So,
how was your daughter able to? Because I know your daughter's coming with you. How was she able to put her life on hold for another 2 months before you started? Had she already left her job?
Yeah, she'd already left her job. She's just been hanging out at home and preparing, getting ready to go.
So tell us how the prep's gone then. Have you ever had 2 extra months? Have you been overthinking it again, like people always do?
Yeah. I'm sure I gained some weight.
That's helpful.
Because for a while I wasn't really exercising until I got to see the doctor. I kind of just was taking it easy, direct,
right.
Let everything rest. And the PVC started like the day after we did a really strenuous hike.
Right.
And I was just worried something was wrong. So
of course.
It's coming along. We're feeling good and preparing for the trip.
You're actually leaving. We're recording Monday, April the 3rd. This comes out on Thursday, April the 6th. And I think you get on the trail on around the 8th, something like that.
Yeah, we leave here Cincinnati from on April 7th, and we'll go down and register as soon as we get there, and then we'll start on the trail, on the approach trail on the 8th.
So how are you feeling then? Now, I mean, you know what, that setback is awful, and to have that setback, but now you've been cleared to go. How do you feel?
Feel great. Yeah, feel good. I still have a little guilt leaving my wife for 5 to 6 months, but because we're remodeling our bathroom and our kitchen right now.
Well, I can't think of a better time to go, because frankly, your opinion won't be sought anyway. So it's all good that she's going to have all the opinions, get things done her own way, and to ease that guilt, you took her away on a cruise, didn't you? So,
yes.
So was that good? Do you think that's going to last 6 months of guilt?
I hope so. I hope it does.
Oh dear. So you set out on Saturday, as I say. Are you going to just not so much ignore what's happened, but just act as if it hasn't happened from the point of view, whatever your plan was, you're going to do whatever your plan was?
That's right. Yeah, it's whatever happens now. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, we're just hoping we're going to take it nice, slow, like everybody says. Do like 8 miles a day for the first few weeks, and then try to make up some ground after that.
There's no real need to. You're leaving about the perfect time for a lot of people. A lot of people say the second week of April is about the perfect time to start. So you've got plenty of time to do it. Is your daughter's Brooke, isn't she?
Yes.
Is she? Does she get anxiety? Has she got anxious about this, or is she just ready to go and she's fit and needing to prepare that much?
She's ready to go. She's ready.
And what about gear?
She was disappointed we had to postpone it.
I bet she was, yeah. But what about gear? Have you, since in that 2 months, have you actually looked at some stuff again and with a few more hikes, you've changed a few bits?
Not really. I've looked at stuff and we're pretty solid on everything.
Right.
Right now we're just trying to dial in all the food. We've bought a lot of food and, try to do some drops off here and there. But my wife's, we actually bought a big container today to put in the back of her car with all the extra stuff. So that when she does come and see us, she can bring all that with us, extra shoes and
sure, everything's
ready. So all she has to do is grab the container and go. So
you live in Ohio?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's her range? When's she going to start coming to visit you?
She said probably 3 weeks she'll come down.
Right.
probably about the time we're due to hit the Smokies, probably right around there.
Right. You'll need a break before that.
Yeah. So she's really we go to the Smokies like at least once a year. So
right.
She knows we'll probably meet at Newfound Gap maybe, and then go down to Gatlinburg for a night or something, and come back up.
So you've doubtless been looking at the various, Facebook pages and the YouTube pages, YouTube channels for this year's hikers. Is there anything you've seen out there that not so much gives you pause, but is interesting? Is the weather good, bad, or indifferent? Have you seen?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of glad we didn't start early, because there were some awful cold days there. we would have hit definitely in February.
Yes. Well, it's funny. Why wouldn't you? I mean, there's a reason April was always the time to start. I think people just want to miss some of the traffic, but they want to get out earlier. But I don't think people realise how damn cold it can be in the mountains in February. I mean, I sort of wish I hadn't started. Although, I don't regret anything I've done in terms of the hike, because I finished both times. But I started second time in February, and that's really tough. I mean, it was just spectacularly cold, and I don't think I'd realised how cold it was actually going to be. And I think the time you're starting, you should start seeing the flowers coming through. I've seen lots of people posting pictures of flowers coming through now, which is great. You'll start getting the leaves on the tree. So you're going to have a great time to be hiking in Georgia, I tell you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah. And what's the first thing you're looking forward to? Is it the other people, or is it just working out your stuff? Because those first few days, you are a little bit out of water. You're a bit like a fish out of water. You don't really know what you're doing. However experienced you think you are, you still feel a little bit, you're just trying to feel your way into it. Is there anything that you're concerned about?
Just hopefully I'm in good enough shape. That's the biggest thing I'm really worried about. That's the approach trail is no joke from what I've heard from everybody. So we'll see how it goes. We're just going to take our time and just enjoy it.
But you're allowed to miss the approach trail, don't you? If you want to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've actually driven up there before and walked a mile back from the parking lot.
Oh, right.
Taking pictures at the start.
Yeah.
That was a few years ago. Yeah. Well, we're going to do the approach. We want to do the whole thing. So.
Yeah, but Steve, you're a retired firefighter. You've probably got
Correct.
quite a bit of physicality anyway. That physicality, you've heard on the show before, no doubt, that you'll get that anyway. And the reason you will is because you walk, and that's going to give you the physicality. I mean, it's tiring to start with. I don't care who you are. You're going to be gasping for breath, and you get the lactic acid in your muscles and so on. That'll need to be dispersed. But once you get going, there's nothing like it. The feeling once you get your legs and you're moving, it's fabulous. So don't worry about the physicality. It's definitely going to come.
Yeah, on our cruise, I made sure I didn't use the elevators. I walked up and down every stairs. We were on the floor, so we walked every day on the deck. It's the 3 laps around is a mile, so I did a lot of laps around the ship. So that was just to try to stay in shape.
Yeah, I'm going to say Georgia it's not like a cruise ship. Oh dear. Well, look, I'm looking forward to your first impressions. So you start this Saturday. Best of luck on Saturday to you and Brooke. And hopefully one time we can speak to Brooke as well. And, when you've been on the trail for about a week or two, just let us know and we'll have you back on, okay?
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, man. Take it easy, okay? Cheers.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye. I love the idea of Steve's wife keeping a container in a car for restocks when she visits. That's support from home. Obviously, I knew before we spoke that Steve had had health issues, but I'm so glad he was able to clear them up. For me, I've never been healthier than I was in both my hikes. I hope that Steve will take it easy, especially at the start, and listen to what his body is undoubtedly going to be telling him. It's good news that he was a paramedic, so he knows about this stuff and will be able to, sort of, keep an eye on himself. Best of luck to Steve and Brooke. Before we hear from Betty, I wanted to remind you all that our Woods Hole video series is getting some traction now, and people are taking advantage of the $100 off, which is available until the end of this month. You'll get access to about 14 hours of video covering all aspects of being successful in a through or section hike on the Appalachian Trail. You should really look at it as an investment in your ambition to complete the AT. After all, you spend a shed load of money on your gear. This will prepare you to take on the challenge for the fraction of the cost of a new tent. Check it out and watch the trailer at the Woods Hole Weekend tab at hikingradionetwork.com. Now, one of our attendees of the Woods Hole weekend last year. Here's Betty McEnany from the top of Albert Mountain.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Betty, how are you? How you been?
I'm good. Now that I'm up off that climb, I'm glad you didn't give me any hints.
It's quite a climb, isn't it? Now, tell everybody where you actually are.
I am at the top of Albert Mountain in North Carolina at the 99.7 mark.
Oh, is it? It's gone down, is it? It used to be 100 miles. You got 0.3 to go.
Well, it says 100 scratched onto the side of the tower, but far out tells you it's 99.7.
Well, we're not going to go over 0.3 of a mile. So you've done 100 miles. Congratulations, because that's quite a mark, isn't it?
Yeah. So like 1/22nd to go, 1/20th of it or something.
Yeah, you're getting there. You know, this isn't a race, and as we all know. And you sent me a couple of notes which we can talk about. One of which, your low point is your runny nose. And I could have just heard it then while you're hiking. Is that because you're sweating a lot? I mean, I had exactly the same problem. I never really worked out what it was.
I don't know whether it's an allergy thing. It's mostly in the morning.
All right.
But yeah, no, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
I tried at Clayton. I stopped and got some Benadryl or something like that, and it maybe helped a little, but not much.
Right.
It has to do with the exertion, because sometimes I'll get it at the gym too.
Right. There you go. But you're going to get plenty of exertion, as you know, on this trip anyway.
Yeah.
But one thing you said, you got no sore muscles, which you're well ahead of me there, because I had terribly sore muscles by now. How are you coping with the physicality of it all?
It's fine on the uphills. If it's a gentle traverse across, sideways across the mountain, that's easy.
Yeah.
But if it's a climb, depending on how steep it is, you may go 50 feet, you may go 100 feet, you may go 200 feet, but you've got to stop and take 4 or 5 breaths, and then off you go again. But, one tip that someone on your show gave you a tip, I think one time, about taking baby steps.
Yes.
Don't let your lead foot go forward of your waist.
Yeah.
And that helps a lot.
Yes.
In the climb. You can go much further than if you attempt to, take big steps.
Now, I know in here that you quite like the traverses, and that's a good way to get up a mountain because you don't get them all that much up north. One thing I used to do was aim for the next corner because to try not to be gasping for breath before the next corner. Are you finding that's a good way to get up the mountain?
Yes, or sometimes if it's a long one, it's the next big tree. But it all works. Yeah.
And one of the things you've also put is that shelters are too full of personalities. Oh my God, who have you got out there this year then?
Nobody bad. Just there's always one that's got to, be the strong point in the conversations.
Yes.
I'm an introvert, so quiet and, a couple of people having a conversation is fine, but someone that's got to be the lead of the conversation and everyone just drives me crazy.
Let me guess it. Is it a guy every time?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course it is.
And he's here. He's from New Jersey, this one.
All right.
And then there's, of course, the 6 people across right next to you is snoring like a son of a gun.
Yeah.
But that, it was better than packing up in the rain. So
yes, absolutely. Yeah. But you're still struggling with sleeping. Is your sleeping pad not comfortable, or you just find yourself you're just trying to get accustomed to sleeping on the ground? Because it's not a natural thing. It doesn't feel like a natural thing to do. I'm sure it is a natural thing from our ancestors, but it doesn't feel an easy thing to do, does it?
No, I think at home I only sleep about 6 hours.
All right.
So to go to bed at dusk, at 8 o'clock, I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm ready to go. And then you toss and turn for the rest of the night. I think I sleep on my back for the first 6 hours. And then after that, I just toss and turn left side, right side.
Yes. And you've referred to a lot of downed trees that obviously the crews haven't got to yet. And you've had really quite heavy, right, strong winds, haven't you? Talk to us what it was like hiking through a strong wind.
It was it was brutal. Thank goodness I was not on a trail that, had steep edges that would make you really nervous.
Sure.
We were going up Standing Indian, and, it was just, there's a trail right sort of just at the edge of the summit and or the edge of the mountain, and you weren't on the inside hill at any point. You were on the outside hill, and they weren't gusts. It was steady, 50-mile-an-hour wind.
Wow, yeah. That's dangerous stuff. It's also dangerous stuff if you look above you, isn't it? I mean, you've got these trees blowing around, and it could bring down a branch. Did you see much coming down? We saw a few fresh ones. It's interesting. I think Vermont is one of the states that doesn't pick up trees that you can step over, and I think that's North Carolina's theory as well. All right.
But some of them, you're doing gymnastics. You're over, under.
Yeah. Also, if they go over one of these traverses, going back and forth, you sometimes have to go up the bank, don't you? Climb over the top of it. I mean, it does slow you right down, doesn't it?
Yeah. And coming up Albert, some of these rocks, that last 0.3 of a mile was hairy, but that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's a great little climb up. It's give you a good indication. Yeah, it gives you a bit of an indication
of what's to come.
What could come later. But to be fair, it doesn't show on the map as anything at all, does it? But my gosh, you don't go very high, but it's pretty darn steep. And and so you also want to give a shout out to somebody at Outdoor 76. So tell me about Alec.
Oh, my feet. Last year, I hiked in the Altar Lone Peaks, and I had a tendon issue on the top of my foot. And I went to the orthopedic PA, and she suggested I get some shoes actually go to a boot instead of the shoe.
Sure.
And I did that. And I went to an outfitter in Vermont and bought a pair of oboes.
Right.
And I didn't get a chance I didn't take the time to work on them, to wear them before them out.
Yeah.
And I was just dying. The toe box was just way too small. Day one, I had a blister the length of my big toe.
Oh.
And then on the inside of both heels, the toe box was just too small. And it wasn't until I hit Clayton that I found an outfitter that that had the altars with the wide toe box.
Right. And this guy sorted you out.
He was fantastic. He took the time to listen. He looked at my feet. He measured both feet sitting down. He had me stand up. It was great. And the minute I put them on, I did 10 miles the next day. It was night and day.
You felt like you were home. Nice.
Oh, God, it was great.
Nice shoes. And you stayed at just 2 hostels so far. I don't think is Above the Clouds renamed or something? And there's also Around the Bend as well. I don't even know where they are. Where are they?
I can't tell you without the map in front of me. Above the Cloud would be Gooch Gap and Woody Gap.
All right.
And Around the Bend, people get off at either Unicoi or Dix Creek.
Right.
So that's the closest I can tell you.
And you enjoyed them both?
I liked the first one better. The second one was full of more loud personalities, but my room was quiet. And it had a washing machine and a comfortable bed and a shower. And what more do you want?
That's right. Yeah. You know what? The loud personalities, and you're a quite reserved person. When I met you, I could tell. But the loud personalities are there, but a lot of the loud personalities tend to drop out eventually because they lose an audience, really. And so you might find that gets a lot easier as you go on. You're coming to Fontana. You on that big walk?
No,
down?
I was wrong. Franklin.
Right.
We're going to get off at, is it Winding Gap?
Right. Winding Stair Gap. Yeah. Right. And you said looking forward to a shower from 6 days ago. Is that right? You've been out for 6 days?
Since the last shower, yeah.
Wow, yeah. And you feel like you need it, don't you?
Oh my God! Yeah, I mean, to think that you would wear the same clothes for 6 days in a row, and when I did the pack shakedown at Mountain Crossing, they had me send my sleep clothes back. So you're wearing the same damn clothes 24 hours a day.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
In Vermont, I'll pick up anybody that's got a backpack, when they're the crossings.
Yeah.
And the first thing that every one of them says when they get into my car is, I'm really sorry about how I smell. Now I get it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The thing I noticed always was as soon as you got into a car, they'd wind the window down because we stink. So all in all, you're 100 miles in. Is it how you'd hoped it would be? Is it different? Is it better or is it worse?
It's like I expected, I think. You sometimes you wonder, how are you going to do this for 5 or 6 months?
Yeah.
And I'm not one to listen to things as I go. I just sort of, you can't take your eyes off the trail or else you'll go ass over tea kettle.
Yes. Nice expression.
Yeah. But no, it's great. And, early on the first night, I met a young gal and we met up again like 5 days later, and the two of us have been hiking together ever since.
Betty, that's one of the real charms of this trail, in my opinion. How young is young, by the way?
22. There's
like
47 years difference between us.
And there you
get
go.
along famously.
And there you go. That is the difference, isn't it? You can spend time with people you wouldn't normally spend time with. So you're opening up. You expand your horizons, and I'm sure she's expanding her horizons by being with you as well. So it's fantastic. That's a great part of it. Well, look, it's great to hear you going well. Great to hear you're 100 miles in, and great to hear you're having a shower after 6 days. Oh dear me. Okay, well look, enjoy it, and we'll speak again in a couple of weeks' time. Okay.
All right, very well, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Take it easy.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
She's a trooper, isn't she? And she said she had the sniffles, and it didn't seem that she was sniffling much. Well, that's what you could do with editing, because she certainly had them while we were recording. And Betty highlighted a problem for many hikers, especially in the early miles. Sleeping, or rather going to bed early, makes it difficult to sleep through the night for many people. Waking up at 2 a.m. in the forest with nothing to do for about 3 or 4 hours when people around you start stirring can be mind-crushingly boring. You just have to adapt the best you can and maybe defer actually going to sleep if you possibly can. It's a dilemma that I never fully solved on either of my AT hikes. I just hope that Betty can sort it out. Thanks as ever go to our monthly donors. This week we thank Ann Dobson, Mike DiCello, Jens Leberheider, Brian Helton Jr., Lisa Rana and Woody Bass, while Monique Nihut and Dennis Young stepped up with generous donations this week. Also, I thanked a lady called Sandra Eastman last week for her donation. Well, I'm sure a Sandra Eastman exists somewhere, but it was actually Sandra Bartlett. So thanks and apologies, Sandra. Now, then the howl came, and we've been hearing how George has been struggling mentally for the past week or so. He can't wait to get home, but when he leaves the trail, he wonders if he'll ever get back on. I'll see you next week. Sunday, 31st of July 1983, mile 1332.1. I slept the sleep of the dead until 7 o'clock. Tom and I didn't hit the trail until 8:30. While we were packing up, the two guys who were with Tom yesterday at the store in Unionville passed by. They told us the climb was not any better in the morning. Tom and I had both decided to take it easy today, so we hiked together. I enjoyed his company. I just wish I had met him while my head was still on straight. I was generally in a good mood as we hiked together, but that miserable feeling kept lurking in the back of my mind, and it was constantly creeping back and taking over. The first few miles were mostly through Wayawanda State Park. Like those which I had passed yesterday, all the streams along the trail today were dry. Ironically, my guidebook informs me that Wayawanda is a Lenape Indian word meaning water on the mountain. Not this summer. It figures. After all the rain in Georgia, North Carolina and Tennessee, I'm now hiking through one of the hottest, driest summers to hit the central states of the Atlantic seaboard in years. I cannot wait to see what northern New England holds in store for me. I can almost hear the sleigh bells now. About 5 miles into our hike, Tom and I hit the point where the Appalachian Trail crossed a paved road called the Warwick Turnpike. I suggested that we check out a fruit stand, which was mentioned in the Philosopher's Guide as being a quarter mile down the road. This became an excellent side trip. I'd expected to find a little shack sitting in front of some farm with a farmer selling a few apples. I'd only suggested we stop there because we both needed water, and I figured we could buy an apple or two and then ask to fill our canteens. The place turned out to be a huge barn filled with almost every type of fresh fruit and vegetable imaginable. They had a refrigerator full of cold soda for sale and a policy of providing free water to backpackers. It was another one of those small businesses along the Appalachian Trail that take a special interest in thru-hikers to the point of keeping a hiker's register. The two thru-hikers who passed our camp this morning were already there when we arrived, and we sat down with them to pick out on fruit and trade stories. I had an ice cold soda, a small bunch of white grapes, 2 oranges, 3 bananas and a large bag of cherries. That was more fresh fruit than I had eaten during the past 3 months combined. They left after a half hour, but Tom and I kicked back for another half hour before we started hiking again. While we were hiking the 4 miles from the Warwick Turnpike to the New York state line, we passed a couple of southbound hikers who had stayed at Roger's the night before. They said that Roger told them to pass the word to any long-distance hikers that he would be happy to meet them today, even though it was a Sunday. That was a nice surprise. The trail just across the state line was a bitch. For 2.5 miles, the Appalachian Trail climbed over a series of small rocky crags projecting upward from the ridge crest. There were a few nice views of the vast Greenwood Lake lying just below the eastern side of the ridge, but the trail was rather dangerous for backpacking. Along one stretch, the trail climbed about 15 feet up an almost vertical sheer rock face. It was more like a rock climb than a backpacking trail. Tom was leading the way, and he kept losing the trail until I gave him one simple piece of advice. When you can't find the trail ahead, check the route over which you would least like first. Then he had no problem following the trail route. We finally arrived at the steep side trail, which leads down off Belvoir Mountain to Roger's Appalachian Cottage. Just below the Appalachian Trail, an old round tabletop leaning against a tree proclaimed a small clearing, the Oasis. 2 lawn chairs were placed around another table alongside a metal box containing a jug of Kool-Aid, a jug of water, and the last 2 or 3 days' issues of the New York Times. It was an extremely civilized retreat from the rigours of a July backpacking trip, but we didn't stop there. Our 2 friends had already been by, thoughtfully emptying both jugs and leaving us nothing. As we descended the cliff face, I could see through the trees the roof of a house below, with Roger's Appalachian Cottage painted in large letters across the top. When we arrived, we paused to admire the largest map of the Appalachian Trail in the world, painted on a large wooden wall more than 30 feet in length, erected beside the cottage. Paintings of selected scenes from the trail were around the edges. The work was not yet completed, but enough existed to indicate to me that I'm not the only person connected with the Appalachian Trail who is prone to obsessions. We met our 2 thoughtful friends and warmly thanked them for the thoughtfulness at the waterhole. Roger had been out, but was just arriving as Tom and I showed up. He offered us all a beer, but we all declined. Nobody wanted to tackle that climb back up the mountain with even 1 beer in their system. He gave us all soft drinks. Roger had some friends from England visiting him, so he was planning to sleep at the cottage tonight, a break from his usual Sunday routine. He told us we could all stay if we wanted to. He would be out all night and we would be on our own, but we were free to use the cooking facilities. Regretfully, we all had to decline. We all wished to cover more miles this afternoon in order to be close enough to Graymore Monastery to reach the place in 2 more days. In a normal summer, that would have been no problem, but this year's intense heat and humidity seemed to double the mileage we walk every day. Personally, I was just happy to meet the guy and to see the place. I didn't think it was going to happen after failing in my attempt to make it here by last night. Tom and I planned to go on another 6 miles this afternoon. I began to experience problems soon after we left Roger's. My body has been losing too much salt lately. I'm sweating horribly and cannot seem to hold water. All the water that I drink seems to immediately drain right out of my pores. As we walked, I had a much belated revelation. Sometimes, if you'll pardon the weak pun, it's hard to see the forest through the trees. Having been intermittently obsessed for so many hundreds of miles with reaching Western Connecticut, less than an hour's drive from my home, I'd never stopped to consider that the part of New York in which I was now hiking was perhaps an extra hour's drive at most. Appalachian Trail miles are so much slower than highway miles that I had almost forgotten the automotive age even existed. I could go home for a few days earlier than planned if necessary. The spring at the campsite for which we were heading was reported to be dry, so we needed water for our camp. In my condition, I could not spend another night without plenty of water. I decided that if we did not pass a house where we could get water at the Appalachian Trail crossing of New York 17A, a couple of miles before the campsite, I was going to hitchhike into Greenwood Lake Village and call home for my family to come and pick me up. The area around the road crossing was heavily wooded. I was all set to start hitching when Tom spotted a house hidden in the woods just down the road. The owner was outside. He didn't seem very friendly, but he agreed to give us water. When Tom took a sip from his hose, he commented upon how delicious the water was and asked the owner if it was from a spring. The man's attitude immediately changed. Tom had struck the perfect chord. The man spent several minutes describing to us the process by which the water is pumped up from a spring 350 feet below his property. The public water supply in this area is not very tasty, and this water was delicious. The guy was justifiably proud of it. We soon learned the reason he was touchy about hikers, a constant stream of hikers abusing his hospitality. People park in his yard without permission and help themselves to water without asking. One guy barged right into his house without knocking to ask for something. He warmed to us even more when he discovered we were thru-hikers. He's had good experiences with us. Most thru-hikers are careful about maintaining good relations with local people. We know how fragile the Appalachian Trail route is in those stretches which pass through private lands. I filled up my water bag so that Tom and I would have enough for dinner and breakfast. It was a pain carrying all that extra weight for 2 miles, climbing over 2 more of those miserable rock outcrops along the way, but I made it. The campsite didn't turn out to be a great one. The spring is dry and the ground is not exactly level, but it's our home tonight. I hiked a short 15 miles today and still feel terrible. Tomorrow, if this feeling persists, I'm going home. Monday, the 1st of August, 1983. Mile 1333.8. I packed it in today. I couldn't sleep last night. The humidity was terrible. I've had enough. The weather cannot possibly be any worse in a couple of days than it is now, so this seems like as good a time as any for me not to be hiking. I am physically and emotionally spent. I hiked the 2 miles to the next road crossing, said goodbye to Tom, and hitched a ride into the village of Greenwood Lake, New York. I walked into a diner, called home for my family to come and get me, and sat down for a meal. I'm waiting for my ride now. This is close to being a moment of defeat. I feel so tired and miserable that I have no idea of how I will ever be able to psych myself to get back out on the trail. Probably the last great challenge to my dream looms a few days in the future. I don't even want to think about it now. I just want to go home.